have with me Medha Patkar, who is one of the frontline environment and social activists and specialists, not only in India but throughout the world. Everybody knows what Medha is doing. Now, today we are going to talk about the development versus environment paradigm. Not a new one, but has to be seen through new lenses, the way governments across the country are working. Not only the government in center, but various state governments as well. And Medha is fighting, has been fighting against all these issues throughout the country. Medha, it's such a privilege to meet you again and have the opportunity to talk with you. Medha, let's start with the way the central government is working. Various peoples are complaining they are having all the institutions, they have been breaking down the institutions. Especially if we restrict ourselves to environment-related social issues, there are so many complaints. What do you feel about it? How you see this central government working in the issue of environment and related social agendas?
I remember that one of the central ministers had raised a question in the parliament. He said, do you want environment or development? This dichotomy is really very, very flawed and fraudulent one. And it is a fake distinction to be made, because everyone knows that what is development, that needs to be first decided, and that is depending on your vision and then the goals and then the specific objectives and then your plans.
Right.
Now that vision, if it is of some activity which is called as development, may it be building and construction, may it be mining, may it be high-rise buildings and urbanization, industrialization, but at any cost.
At any cost.
Cost of nature and cost of people. Then you can go ahead, but then that will be destructive of development, of environment, and it will be against the real development, which means fulfilling basic needs of everyone and giving the equal opportunities to really progress.
But just to kind of interrupt you here, because you raised this issue. Recently, the series of global reports on climate change is saying how we are being destined to be disrupted.
Yes.
And now almost the point of no return we have reached. And they are saying if we don't start the kind of redemption process by 2025, that's another couple of years from now, we are nowhere. So under this perspective, what you are saying is becoming more important. 1,500
and more scientists across the globe are warning the humanity, saying that it will be your end. Yesterday was the Earth Day. We celebrate Environment Day, we celebrate Earth Day, we celebrate Water Day, but every single life support is getting affected due to the game that is played with the natural resources. And that destructive or extractive ways are really affecting the lives and also the livelihoods dependent on those resources. Absolutely. And that is why we must really compel the governments to take cognizance of it. Now, who are the governments? They are just the custodian or the trustees, nothing beyond that. They cannot be owner of the earth.
But they
so it
feel like owners. What they own it?
Yes, I mean they act with the vision of commodification. And that's why every natural resource is considered as a capital and nothing beyond that. While for the majority of population within India and across the world, it is the life support. And without nature, can anyone survive? When the oxygen was not available, even the richest of the people and families face death.
Medha, before I go to the specific states and ask specific questions on the states, apart from what you just said, that the whole perspective about environment and the governance, we have seen being diluted for a long, long time. We have been fighting for this cause for so many years, decades. But this government is particularly accused of being destructing the institutions. What's your take on that? Because that's a much bigger issue.
Very true. The constitutional authorities are weakened. And it is the political intervention, but it is also the legal intervention. They are weakening the legal regime that was somewhere of help to protect the environment. The constitution itself has articles like Article 50, 51 saying that the state's responsibility is to conserve and preserve nature and make the pure air and all natural resources available to the citizenry at large. And that could happen only when the state was following law and the constitution. But then now we are seeing that while due to the struggle by the people across the country, there were some laws, some rules, regulations, like the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 or the Environment Protection Act of 1986, and then the EIAs, the Environment Impact Assessment, started from 1994, the various notifications of 2006, but now the 2020 notification shows that the central government doesn't want application of those laws and those principles. Now, when the directive principles in the constitution say what should happen and what should not, the state is duty bound to follow those. Those are not justiciable. You cannot stand in the court and say that,
Absolutely.
See, the wealth is accumulated in the hands of a few, so Article 39 is violated. But still, the constitution provides the directions and makes the state duty bound to follow that. Now that itself is rejected, and the Ministry of Environment itself is weakened. Now that is bypassed and peripheralized. So what would happen to the communities living on natural resources? They are also peripheralized and marginalized. And when even today we have the largest number of people in the country living still on agriculture, which is a culture and an economy both. And they are the ones who are protecting the food security. The Adivasis have really conserved the forests. They might be seen clear felling one tree as fuel, but they have not destroyed forest as much as these governments are destroying. And so even water, now they are going in for waterways. That means that 22,000 kilometer long rivers would be used for the cargo transport and so on. That is leading to pollution. Industrialization needs to be at least monitored and controlled by the pollution control boards. Those have become political control boards. So everything is changing, and that's why with the changed legal regime, people can certainly take to mass movements like the farmers did and stopped the laws that would have destroyed or finished off the agriculture, which is based on the self-reliance to the extent possible till date. So they talk about Atmanirbhar and all.
Medha, I was asking that about this river linking project. The river linking project to the paint forest, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, where even the Supreme Court appointed committee is saying it's not desirable. They have submitted the report to Supreme Court, it is available. But despite that, the central government in the budget allocated about 45,000 crores for implementation of that, without apparently taking confidence of the state government, though the water is a kind of issue in both state and center. How do you see this kind of steps?
See, interlinking of rivers is something which is not acceptable even at the international level, because transfer of resources from one river basin to another is not considered as sustainable and not even just. And here the interlinking of rivers, when it started, the former President Abdul Kalam ji was very much for it. But I had met with very eminent persons like Kuldeep Nayyar and L.C. Jain and Ramaswamy Iyer, Mr. Kalam sir. And we realized that he was not very knowledgeable about the water resources and the resource matrix and the various ways and means to really manage those and the related impacts. He asked a question, what do you mean by river basin to us? So his idea was with good intention to really draw the surplus waters from Brahmaputra to Ganges to Kaveri and provide to the deficit facing regions. But that doesn't happen that way. Each river has its own ecosystem and there are needs not fulfilled. And if you are dependent on Brahmaputra, the China has already built a dam at the Greater Moat. So that all was a failure in a way. But all those 30 really links in the peninsular region itself required building of many dams, many structures. Who had studied the impacts? And it was not impact which would be both project based, but the cumulative impact assessment that had never taken place. I remember when Suresh Prabhuji was the water resource minister, he invited me to the seminar and I took a position that this is non-viable, this is not feasible, and this is not sustainable. Rajendra Singh also supported the same position, and it was 5,60,000 crores worth project at that time. Today it would be 15 lakh crores or whatever. And who would invest the money? The corporates today are awaiting entry into every project and every sector, because with their monetary investment they draw out the resources and benefit out of those, whether it is agri-produce, whether it is water or energy in different forms. So the same thing would happen. Also the interstate conflicts. Today also in Krishna, in Narmada, in Godavari, there are interstate conflicts going on. What would happen if you have these kinds of surplus deficit concept? The state governments, depending on which party is in power, but even beyond that, today even in Narmada, Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat have to take to arbitration, because the Gujarat is not giving the benefits to Madhya Pradesh, not even generating power. So it is the same party ruling in two states and still they cannot come to a consensus so easily. So this all would have happened. So they have not pushed the same project. I think Rahul Gandhi had taken a better position with the youngsters around him, more knowledgeable about the ecological and environmental issues. But the Supreme Court also had continued with that petition, and finally if the committee has given a report on one project, the same would come on many projects in the part of the interlinking of rivers. So this idea of a mega plan was even denied by Jawaharlal Nehru, who once called Bhakra Nangal as the modern temple. But then later on with V.R. Krishna Iyer and all, he shared a dais and said, after having come from China, that this is a megalomania and this is a disease of largeness. So I think this should be avoided, and the latest post-modern approach to manage water, land and forest resources would necessarily have to be decentralized.
That's the option. That's the option.
Yes, and that is the democratic governance. If they are not even asking the state governments, it is the assault on the federal structure. But we start with the local self-government. When you call them local self-government, you don't even consult them, you don't seek their consent for any project. That's ridiculous.
Medha ji, on that self-government issue, let's come to the state now, West Bengal. Now, you have very good personal relationship with Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. I know when she was having her movement, you came a number of times, met her, actually kind of supported her in various ways. But the same government is now planning to do the Devcha Pachami project, which is one of the biggest in the world in terms of coal mining. There are a lot of oppositions from environmental issues, from the social issues. How do you see that?
See, we came to support the people's movement, whether in Singur or Nandi, they called us. Mamata ji supported as a political leader through the party politics, and we supported through people's politics. And I remember how Mahashweta Devi and everyone, Aparna Sen and the artists, the intellectual forum, everyone supported that movement. And that was to save the nature and to save people. It was corporatization of one kind. When Salim International was to enter and take occupation of the land and everything that belonged to 119 villages, they had to fight the battle and we had to support them. It is the mining sector that is also taking a toll of the Adivasis. Whether it is Maharashtra, the Vidarbha area, whether it is Jharkhand, whether it is West Bengal now. We are surprised that Mamata Banerjee, who was strongly against forceful land acquisition, and even the left front joined us in changing the law of 1894, which was imposing upon the people transfer of land, water,
The Land
river,
Acquisition,
everything.
you were
Land
saying.
Acquisition Act of the British days.
Right.
And then when the 2013 Act came into being, the left front leaders also were with us. And even the, was it the BJP leader? She also supported us.
At that point in time.
Yeah. And what's her name? The lady.
Huh? Anyway, I think.
Yeah. So it was very, very essential that we would support all the struggles. And Mamata Banerjee or Hemant Soren or Stalin, the non-BJP government really, had taken many positions on many issues, which was of profit making, industrialization, that would be, profit over people or profit over nature kind of vision reflected. So this is really surprising. And what Mamata Banerjee is promising is rehabilitation to the people. But before rehabilitation...
Also she's saying that I am against any forcible kind of removal of any people.
Yes,
will not do that.
That's why the consent of the people should be the first and the foremost basis of taking up any project. And we understand that even today, when the climate change is requiring a lot of energy for cooling and so on, and people are dying in the open as the workers community is facing because of the heat and humidity kind of combination. We need to really, on one hand, need energy for those things, but we also need to stop climate change. And that's why when the Greta Thunberg kind of young activists say degrowth should be our manzil, we say that it should at least be growth with sustainability and justice.
Right.
And so that growth cannot come through the ad hoc kind of mining, whether it is sand mining, rare earth mineral mining, or any coal mining. And when the Prime Minister or others also go for the global summit and say that by 2070 we will bring down the carbon emission to zero, that is not possible if we go on with the coal mining. Central government after Paris Convention also opened up the 41 coal blocks.
Exactly.
And
those
those also
part of that. Those is part of that 41.
Yes, and giving to the private sector.
Right.
That sector will never consider anything beyond profiteering. And so there would be no rules and regulations followed and so on. So all of this needs to be thought of, and also the removal of rock in that area in a huge way, which is on one hand no doubt providing some contract labor work or whatever to the Adivasis there. Yes. But still, you cannot really have the state exchequer filled with the liquor business, and you can't have the rock removed at the cost of the agriculture and water cycle and pure air also. So everything will be unlivable in that area, and so the Adivasis will be
they're already fighting there.
Yes, and migrated forcibly or indirectly.
Do you plan to kind of meet and talk to Mamata Banerjee on this issue of Devchapachan?
Right now not, but our organizations and the alliance in West Bengal feels very strongly that she should listen to people, and I think the tribal leaders who met her recently opposed it. So I think there should be something like People's Tribunal taking into consideration all the opinions and issues and bringing out a solid report on behalf of the civil society at large. And that has been happening in West Bengal much more than in other countries. So I still am hopeful that Mamata Ji will show her sensitivity. And although the thermal power is needed today and you cannot magically change the power paradigm, but you cannot go ahead in the same direction as the Modi government is taking. So that's what we expect from this.
So you're still hopeful that something positive will come out of that whole deliberation of
Yes,
discourse?
because the strong people's protest, people's movement matters. When the farmers' movement made Modi repeal the 3 laws, which are anti-farm laws, anything can happen with the movement, with any government in power.
When I'm talking about this politics part of it, in West Bengal, the left and CPM, they're opposing this whole process of Deutsche Pachami. But the same government in Kerala, been doing the KRL, and you have been opposing it. How you see these political leaders, the moment they change the geography, they also tend to kind of, they completely don't remember the history. So they change the history to the geography. So how you see that? The same left government who are fighting in the Krishak Andalan, peasants movement, here Deutsche Pachami, but in Kerala they are almost doing the same thing.
Even today we are together in the farmers movement. No doubt about it, and the All India Kisan Sabhas showed a great strength and a contribution to the movement, no doubt about it. But K-Rail is another bullet train. It may be called as semi-high speed, but it is for the higher speed compared to the the railway otherwise. That is K-Rail is built for. But has the environmental impact assessment taken place? No. Social impact assessment? No. And why is this a priority? When bullet train is opposed by the CPM and the Adivasi leaders in that area of Maharashtra, right, as the non-priority project, this is a part of the neoliberal agenda. And Modi ji brought that kind of technology first. Why should Pinarayi Vijayan follow the same path? Again, the question is the same. And the various kinds of environmental impact. In the flood-affected Kerala, a small, beautiful, bountiful state in the country.
God's own state. God's own
state. And the 2 embankments, like the 2 walls that they are going to build, will really affect and stop the natural flows of water, and it will be leading to further floods, if not floods, waterlogging and so on. So wetlands, agricultural fields, and also houses. The Keralites have not kacha houses anywhere. Absolutely. They may be bringing money from the Gulf countries or whatever, but they all have a small beautiful bungalow with a small little lake in front, the green cover around, and all that to be destroyed. The expressway has already done it, and many of the families who were already affected by the expressway are again displaced here, because they shifted their house on the balanced land, and now that is. But there is no dialogue with the Kerala government, because the leadership is of Pinarayi Vijayan. It is different with Sitaram Yechuri or Hanan Maulaji, and I don't think they can easily take a decision in favor of K-Rail. The central government has not approved the project. The financial viability is under question. The DPR is full of flaws, and it is the international finance by the bilateral agency like JICA that really brings in the effect. The Narmada Dam, Sardar Sarovar, was pushed by the World Bank funding. It was 5% of the then budget. Now the total cost is 12 times the initial cost. And the World Bank pushed the project and made it a fait accompli. Now the benefits of project are not coming through. The canals are not built inside the Kutch with a full network, and they are worst affected. So it is the post facto analysis that shows you how wrong was it. But then it's better that we have a pre facto total kind of consideration of issues, dialogue, not just debate, and really decide what is democratic way of planning such projects, and what are to be our priorities, and who should be participants in the decision making process. Without all that, going on with the international finance, not consulting the assembly as a whole, neither the parliament, because there is no oversight of parliament on the international agreements and funding. And all this is the neoliberal agenda, which we don't expect the left front to be following.
Exactly.
And we expect all opposition parties also to take a position.
Medha, we discussed a range of issues, but one issue which cannot be kind of no way disconnected in a discussion with you is about Narmada River. We've been fighting for the cause, there have been a lot of issues that happened. What is the current scenario in Narmada? Because many people are feeling that everything has been finished or something of that sort, but I know it's not. So what's the current situation in Narmada and where does the whole movement stand as of now?
You see, all the questions which we had raised and later taken up by the World Bank and their finance they had withdrawn in 1993 onwards are proved to be the real questions.
Okay.
When we raise the issues related to social and environmental, we also question the cost-benefit analysis. This project is not giving the benefits which it had promised. And the cost-benefit analysis was done by Tata Economic Consultancy Services, and they had written in their report that they were not given the due time and there was no data available, even hydrological data, so they depended on the Tapi river and so on. The same thing is happening in the case of many projects today. And that time when this happened, it was not just shocking, but it was challenging. And the people to be displaced formed the main force. But we fought from the local to global fora. And that's why we questioned the World Bank that was funding against its own manual, its own indicators and framework. And the whole list of projectized studies was annexed with their appraisal. Without those studies and plans, how could they fund the project? And because of their pressure, the laws of the land also were violated. Environmental clearance was a conditional clearance. Now in EIA 2020, that is what is followed. That anyone can start the project and then the clearance can be given. This is nonsense and this is not absolutely acceptable. Today, the Narmada itself is affected. The sea has come in up to 80 kilometers. At the moment, it is up to 30 kilometers or so. But it had reached 80 kilometers. It has salinized the Narmada waters in the downstream of the dam in Gujarat. And the Gujarat's own farmers, fish workers, even industrialists had to fight that battle because they are in the downstream, that is 150 kilometers or so area. And the upstream, if you see, the illegal sand mining has finished off the Narmada as much as Yamuna. And that's why the dam has gone up, the river has gone down. There is drought even in the Narmada basin today, that is being reported. There is so much of pollution. We raised all questions. I pleaded the sand mining case myself and got a stay order, but still that mafia is on and on with the political blessings. And it is also pollution because the industrial estates are throwing out the effluents right into the rivers, and those tributaries are meeting Narmada. Today the officials are saying that if any farmer uses Narmada waters for irrigation, he or she will not get a certificate for organic farming. Then how can we drink that water? It is non-potable water. So the Narmada is this, and they are planning with least amount of water that they would take the water to Kutch, but there is no micro canal network built in the Kutch. So the Kutch's canals, I will show you the photographs, are full of soil and mud, not of water. And they are still bringing in, the Adani thermal power project is there. Yes. They are bringing in another huge industry. And they are diverting the water to industries, and that's why they don't want the full canal network from the Sardar Sarovar project to be built. And with this now, the arbitration with fights are going on between Gujarat and Maharashtra and Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. There is no power generation, and Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, having faced maximum loss of land, forest, everything, are to get only power benefit, no, not a drop of water from this project. That's why these two states had opposed the dam for 10 full years before the tribunal. But today, because power is not given, both the states are asking for monetary compensation. If it was only the exchange of money, why was the dam necessary? Exactly. Why was it built? Absolutely. And they have destroyed the huge communities, generations old Adivasi communities in the hills and the plain where the houses were like this. We fighting the battles have really got best of rehabilitation in the world, but still there are a few thousand families. We have got all orders for giving land to the potters but not yet given. We want the full Jalashay reservoir to be given to the Federation of the Fisheries Cooperatives which we have, which are registered. Maharashtra part is given but not Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. So there are conflicts on many issues, and when the benefits are not come true, the cost not only of displacement, where we could get 50,000 families rehabilitated, not we alone, but governments also had to cooperate. World Bank had to withdraw from this project, saying it is going to be a destructive project. And that is the picture that has come up, and they have spent not less than 55 to 60,000 crores, while the original cost was supposed to be 4,200 crores. So what is the cost benefit analysis? And where is the feasibility, viability, sustainability and justice? So every project people cannot fight and get even rehabilitation so easily. Other dams in Narmada Valley, which are partly built or fully built, have not witnessed rehabilitation of this sort. And still they are pushing other dams also with the funding from various sources.
So what next to Narmada? What you plan to kind of
we are questioning all this. The Supreme Court we stood before when they decided to finish the dam. That was once the Modi government came to power. He did not care about any law, any data, any rules to be followed, etc., any commitments. And Supreme Court then said that the four chief ministers should sit together and decide whether rehabilitation is completed or not, and whether the decision to fill the full reservoir was right or wrong. But they did not hold a meeting till the government of Kamal Nath ji was defeated. And Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray opposed Gujarat and said in the meeting that this was a wrong decision, we still have not completed rehabilitation. And Rajasthan kept quiet, although it was Gehlot government. And Madhya Pradesh also kept quiet. But now they are demanding about 8,000 crores from Gujarat. And Gujarat is saying you have to pay back 7,000 crores. So this is all money laundering that is taking place. They are making false allegations against us. We are ready to answer back. But they have to be truthful and at least accept that these kinds of big dams, gigantic dams, are stopped by the USA. Their model we had followed since the Tennessee Valley into Damodar Valley in Bengal and Bhakra Nangal and so on. But USA had demolished 1,000 dams to make the rivers flow freely. And here, if you destroy the river like Narmada, river like Ganges, with these type of dams where even the environmental flows into seas are not taken into consideration, is absolutely unscientific and inhuman and anti-nature and people.
Medha ji, before I just come to the last question, do you consider that from the Narmada experience you just spelled out, that how this whole project has gone on his head actually, completely, whatever the promise was there, even to the states are not being made, and now each of them asking money from other. Do you feel that projects in future, the big, so-called big projects, they should learn from this Narmada experience and can kind of correct courses on the line?
Very true. I was one of the commissioners on the World Commission on Dams. We studied the big dams across the world, and the common
including Daucha Pashami, that they are taking such a big project, should learn from what happened in Narmada.
Yes, big project in general also need to be looked at, and decentralization is the solution and option. But as far as the rivers are concerned, the rivers are being killed with the big dams, not just the riverine communities and the riverine forests and the prime agricultural land which is generally on the river banks. And that is the international opinion today. And that's why we feel as World Commission on Dams, when we brought out a consensual, unanimous report, it was headed by the Water Resource Minister of South Africa, closest to Nelson Mandela, and also the World Bank consultant was there, and the Chinese authority on Three Gorges was there, and there were representatives of the big companies which had built maximum number of dams, and still after 2.5 years of work, we could come to a consensus. I was representing the people's movements, there were some representatives of NGOs, environmentalists, etc. And we really came to a common report, which was a great achievement. Although I had to put a small dissent note on globalization and privatization, it was not properly reflected in the report. But it was a wonderful experience of global policy making with participation of multi-stakeholders. This should happen in every sector related to every project in India. And that is possible. If we are a democratic country, we have to be democratic society, and democratic governance should be our support.
So it should happen everywhere.
Yes.
Finally, Medha, I was just looking at the world environmental justice and movements across the world. I found that at this point of time there are 3,660 movements across the world. And with China, you just mentioned about China leading it around 455, but India 415 is a very close second. How do you see that as somebody who has been fighting for the cause of environment, for the not only for the environment but also for the social issues related to that? How do you see that this number of movements are growing with last few years, but are the people getting benefit or just movement? What the movement is giving to the people?
You see, if this is the number of movements, which is not just agitation, then the consideration of struggles would bring in a larger number. And China's number also must have been an underestimate. Certainly, yes. But it is true that this kind of struggles and the movements emerging out of not just upsurges, agitations, but those are the struggles for survival, and that is a must, without which the Adivasis living on forest near the river banks, the fish workers living in the coastal or the riverine regions, the Pashupalak, the cattle grazers living with their cattle and the grazing land, when their basis for livelihoods and the life support natural resource matrices are under assault, they have to fight the battle, and they have to question the state, but they also question the society, because the vulgar disparity within the society is reflected into forcible acquisition, occupation, and so on. And today it is the worst when the caste and communal vision and the approach is again attacking certain communities which are minority communities which are targeted. So in any situation, wherever there is displacement that leads to deprivation and also destitutionalization, that must be challenged, and that is challenged by the people. So without movements, we cannot. The electoral politics has its limitations proved. It is not just EVM machine, but the mechanisms and mechanics of gaining vote banks, attaining that they are using, that cannot be so easily challenged. It is better that we challenge the wrong development paradigm and protect nature and protect our own freedom, our freedom of expression, our freedom to decide what is development and what is not, and also our survival. That can happen only through non-electoral people's struggles and movements. And this is proved by the farmers' movement. Yes, otherwise, those three acts would not have been repeated.
That's a huge silver line.
Yes.
It's a huge silver line.
Yes. It's a dark line, black line, you should say. But even after repealing of those three acts, the central government is going ahead, bringing in Bill Gates Foundation, bringing in various kinds of corporate players, Walmarts and others, and so it is not so easy to really turn back corporatization, which is converting natural resources into commodification. And this corporatization has affected the sector of education, sector of health, everything, and bringing in the vulgar, unacceptable disparity, inequity, which is against constitutional rights, against human rights per se.
Medha, it's such a privilege to talk with you and for your time, a range of issues, and really, we all expect that you will provide leadership, you will continue to provide leadership, the activists across the country.
It's a collective leadership in the National Alliance of People's
I
Movements.
know.
Also Hindi Dharma.
But there are some people.
Today I am here. My colleagues received award yesterday for our schools of life. Given Shalas, our
I was checking with your schedule for the last couple of weeks before I meet you today, and I was finding that you have been to Telangana, you have been to Kerala, you have been now in West Bengal. You spoke to the Chupashami issue, so you have been kind of yes. The team has to be there, but such a privilege to meet you and talk a range of issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so
Thank you all being here today to celebrate and the accomplishment of a not-for-profit organization serving the community since 2000 and the first to celebrate a platinum jubilee.